All right, everybody. So today's lesson is about solving quadratic equations by factoring. So we learned factoring before so we can use it for other topics, and this is one of those topics, solving equations. So factoring, as I mentioned before, is a very useful tool in algebra that we use to solve a bunch of problems, including equations, simplifying expressions, rational expressions, and a bunch of other things. So let's see one of those applications of factoring today, which is solving equations, mostly quadratic and third-degree equations. Okay, so before we get into that, we first need to talk a little bit about something called the zero product property. Zero product. So what this is basically just means when you multiply two things, when you multiply, let's say, two quantities, two amounts or two expressions, for example, a times b is 0. This means at least one of them must be 0 in order to get 0 from their multiplication, from their product. Okay, that's what we call the zero product property. If you have two expressions or three or more, and when multiplied, their product is 0, that means at least one of those has to be zeros. So this means a equals 0 or b equals 0. So at least one of them has to be 0, if not both. If both are 0, their product will also be 0 because 0 times 0 will be 0. So this is a very important concept we're going to be using to see how to solve quadratic equations by factoring using the zero product property. You could also apply to a times b times c equals 0. That means at least one of them is 0. So let's see how that works. So let's say take an equation a, or say x minus 2 times x plus 3 is 0. So this is basically a product. Product means a multiplication. So product of a and b is 0. Here we have a product of this expression times this expression in the parentheses. Think of this as the a that we mentioned here times some b, and their product is 0. And again, if a times b is 0, that means either a is 0 or b is 0, or probably both. Same thing here. So a times b is 0, that means either a, which happens to be x minus 2, is 0, or b, the second factor, is 0. X plus 3 is 0. Once you split the equation into two basically smaller first-degree equations, this is a second-degree or quadratic equation because x times x is x to the second. This is what makes an equation quadratic, this term. That's why we call it quadratic. Quadratic equations. Whenever the highest degree in an equation is 2, it's called quadratic or second degree. If not, if it's like this, where the power is 1, this is a linear or first degree equation, as we'll learn how to solve in the first term. Okay, so once you split this into two equations, now we're going to solve each one of them. So plus 2 here, plus 2 on the other side. So we learned again, talking about first degree equations in detail in the first term. So these cancel, x is 2. So that's one of the solutions of this equation. Or the other solution is solving this smaller equation, first degree equation, so minus 3 minus 3. So x is negative 3. That's what we call the solution set of this equation. Most of the time, quadratic equations, because of power 2, will have two solutions. So you have two solutions or less. Sometimes one solution, sometimes none. But you can't have more than two. So the solution set, you can write it in set notation as we learned before. So S for solution, colon, you open your curly braces, then you list all your solutions. You list them from the lowest to the highest. So we're going to start from -3, comma, 2. If you have more solutions, you list them. With the third degree equations, for example, you could have as many as 3 solutions. For this now, that's the solution for this equation. We have 2 solutions. So it could be 2, could be sometimes just 1 solution, or sometimes none, no solution, like this. So for example, we say solution set is empty set. This means no solution with actually maybe 2. So it's like a 0 with a slash through it. It means no solution or empty set. This is a set with 2 elements. This is a set with no elements, none. Okay, so there's no curly braces, just this symbol here, 0, and a line through it, which means no solution. Okay, so quadratic equations may have 2 solutions, sometimes 1 solution, or sometimes none. We'll talk about this later. That's basically the concept of solving quadratic equations by factoring using the zero product property. Again, when 2 things multiplied and the product is 0, that means one of those things or both are 0. And whenever you have a product like this, you can split it into smaller equations. But sometimes the equation may not be in this form, may not be in the form of A times B. It might be in the A plus B plus C form. So we can't use the product property here because we don't have products. That's when we use factoring, we turn this into some product. Turn this into some product like this. I don't know, some random things here. Let's say F and maybe G, just like here. Once we factor into this, then we can use a zero product property. So always factor first if necessary. If not, you can go ahead and use a product property. Okay, so the whole class, this whole lecture basically will be based on this. Factor first if necessary, use the product property to solve. Okay, so before we move on to another example, are you guys okay? Everybody on board at this point?
Yes.
Everybody in the room? Let me hear from all of you.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody, please let me know if you have any questions at any moment. Please stop me and ask questions. So that's the whole concept. Again, we're going to be using this for the entire thing. Okay, any questions, everybody?
No questions.
No question. No question.
Okay, all right, so let's look at more examples. Or before we do that, let's introduce quadratic equations formally. So let's call this number 2. So solving quadratic, as I mentioned before, equations. Let's start with the standard form of all these equations. So you remember when we talked about polynomials or quadratic polynomials or quadratic functions, we use this standard form. So for equations, you will always have something like this. We used this last time, if you remember, when we factored trinomials. So basically a quadratic equation is a polynomial like this with degree 2, and then some other side. Could be 0 here, or could be numbers, or could be another expression like this. So this is what we call the standard form. Okay, standard form of all the quadratic equations. The highest power is 2, that's why we call it quadratic, okay, because of the 2. And then today we're going to learn how to solve them using factoring. We have other methods. We have at least 3 other methods of solving quadratic equations, but today we're only going to be talking about the factoring method. So as it implies, so we need to factor first. If it's not already factored like this, we have to factor it. For example, this one, if it's in this form, it's standard form, it's not factored, so we're going to have to rewrite it like this before we can use the zero product property. So let's take an example here. Let's say we have x to the second and some other terms here. Okay, so this is a quadratic equation in this form, standard form, as you can see. So standard form is when you have all the terms on one side and the other side is zero only. That's what we call standard form. We always need to make sure the equation is in the standard form before we go ahead and factor it or solve it. So ignore this is zero. Just look at the left side. That's a trinomial with 3 terms, and we'll learn how to solve this in the first term. So to solve this, always make sure we have 1 here. It is an invisible 1, and 2. If you have coefficient 1 and degree 2 with 3 terms, then you can immediately start 2 sets of parentheses. Then start each one with x, as we saw with factoring before the midterm. Now we need to find 2 numbers that multiply. 2 numbers that multiply to what again, everybody?
It's gonna be 3 and 2.
3 and 2, that's right. 2 numbers that multiply to 6 and add up to 5.
It's gonna be positive, like because.
That's right. They're both going to be positive. Positive 2 and plus 3. Now, is this in the zero product property form? Do we have it in this form of a times b is 0? Yes, we do.
No.
So we have a
Mm-hmm.
times b equals 0.
Yes.
What does that mean? If a times b is 0,
So we're gonna get -2 and -3.
how do you get that before that? Let's take it step by step.
Okay, x plus 2 equals 0.
That's right. Either this one equals 0.
And x plus 3 equals 0.
That's right. Or
Or
other factor would be x plus 3.
X plus 3, so
0. Once you split your equation into smaller first degree equations, as you can see, you can easily solve these individually and find 2 solutions. So yeah, subtract 2, subtract 2.
But professor,
Mhm.
isn't easier like just to put like, for example, +2 just to the right side and we get negative?
Yep, you can move this
Yeah,
over.
just like x equal -2, just like transfer it to the right side.
That's right. That's basically the fastest way of
Yeah,
doing it. But
because I don't understand those like -2, -2.
it's all right. You can use that. What you're saying
Yeah.
basically came from here. So the idea of adding the same thing or subtracting the same thing from both sides of the equation leads to that. So this is where that came from. What you're saying came originally from here. So we have to subtract or add to both sides. Faster way to do it is just move it to the other side and turn it into.
Yeah, that's what yeah.
That's fine. You can do it. It's just a faster way. You skipped basically 1 step or 2 here.
Mhm.
Everybody, so that's basically how it works. Factor first.
so positive turns on negative, right?
And
So,
negative.
okay.
Or
It should be always like that, right?
That's right. That's right. So
Okay, thank you.
always factor first if you have to, then solve. Okay, let's. So again, it's all based on factoring. 90% of this is based on factoring. The only new thing is this concept here of zero product property. That's why I said before, factoring is very important and will make most of them few next classes for this semester will make them a lot easier. So you do want to go back and review the factoring we did from the midterm, all the 4 methods of factoring. We spent 2 classes on them, so make sure you review that because most of it is based on that. Most of this is based on that. That's one example. Now let's take a look at another one. So let's say we have negative 7x So this is a quadratic equation, as you can see, because the highest power is 2. We want to solve it by factoring. Okay, so all about factoring today. What do you think we need to do first to solve this equation by factoring? Where do you start?
Fine. Can we move negative 12 and then just write like we're gonna change the sign
Over where?
like x to the power 2 minus 7x plus 12 equals 0? No?
So we need to move this over first.
Yeah.
As we said before, the equation has to be in standard form. So this is a standard form. All the terms must be on one side. And the other side should have 0 only. So if you have something on both sides or something on this side, you can move this here, or you can move both of these to the other side. As long as you get one side with 0 and the other side with the other terms, that means the equation is factored. So let's move this over. And remember, whenever you move something,
Just positive.
Yeah, we changed the sign.
that's right.
It's gonna be positive.
That's right. Negative 12 turns into positive 12. Negative 12 moves over, becomes positive 12. Then we have the equal sign. So if you move this to the
0.
left side, what's
0.
0.
That's good. So now this is in standard form, in this standard form basically. Okay, what is the next step?
Then we're gonna factor.
That's right. So standard form was the first step. Now that we have this, basically we have something like this. So we're gonna factor it first.
I'm sure that it's 4 and 3, but the signs are
X plus 7.
So this is 1, this is 2, and yeah, so we need two numbers that multiply to 12.
it's gonna be 2 negative.
It's gonna be 2
No?
negative.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, think you will. So two numbers that multiply to positive 12, same numbers add up to negative 7. Those numbers must
Negative 4 and negative 3.
That's right.
I mean negative 3 and negative 4, yeah.
Doesn't matter which one you write first. So if you times these, you get positive 12. If you combine them, you get negative 7. So again, we talked about factoring in detail. So go back and review the last 2 lectures before you start this if you forgot your factoring. Okay, now it's in zero product property. So this is A times B equals 0. What does that mean again?
Yeah, so x negative 3 equals 0 and x negative 4
That's right.
equals
A is 0 or B is 0. So we're going to split this into smaller equations, x minus 3. 0 or x minus 4.
X minus 4. 0.
0.
0.
Then we get
So
3
this
and 4.
3 over. If we move 3 over, it becomes positive 3. Or
And positive 4.
that's right. And you can write the solution set in the set notation. So the name, colon, curly braces, and you list your solution the smallest to the highest. In this case, 2 solutions, so we can write them together. And you can always check by plugging this back into the very first equation, not this one, not this, the original one. That's what you need to check. If you want to check, you see that it matches or it validates the equation. Okay, so this one took more steps because it wasn't in standard form. So again, always make sure your equation is in standard form, like this.
How do you check it, Professor?
Then factor and then solve. I'm sorry, say it again.
How do you check it? You just said like you can move it like to the first one, 3 and 4.
Yeah, you just plug, for example, 3. You gotta plug 3 here. 3 to the second is 9.
Okay.
7 times 3, 21. And you say is it equal to negative 12. And you can see it is. So okay, that's how you check. Then you do the same thing with the other number. Plug and make sure you get 2 equal sides.
4, to the second power 16. Okay.
Okay, everybody in the room, are you guys okay?
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yes.
So this shouldn't be-
No, thank you.
Mhm.
No question. Can you get another example, please?
Yep, we're going to be doing a bunch of other examples. So always standard form first, factor, and solve. It doesn't have to be, by the way, it doesn't have to be a trinomial here. It could be a binomial or maybe more, as long as you factor it into some product. Product here doesn't have to be two factors. It doesn't have to be just A and B. It could be A times B times C times D. It doesn't matter, it's the same property. Again, let's take another example. Solve by factoring. Let's say x to the second, maybe 9 times 9 equals 0. Okay, first of all, is this in standard form?
Yes.
Yes, as long as you have all the terms on one side. It doesn't have to be 3 terms, could be any number of terms on one side and 0 on the other side. So this is standard form. You're breaking up. Elcida, your connection is pretty slow.
I have a question.
Can't hear you. Okay, Elcida, your connection here, internet seems pretty slow.
I'm
Okay, so
sorry.
x
You
is
can hear me there? You can hear me?
Yeah. So x minus 9, x to the second minus 9 to equals 0. So this is a quadratic equation. Make sure it's in standard form. It is. What do you do next? Those 3 steps.
Factor.
That's right. Solve by factoring. So you got to factor first. So standard form, check. Now we're going to factor. And what kind of polynomial is this? Or how do you factor this?
X minus 3, x plus 3.
Exactly. So this is what we call the zero, not the zero product, the difference of 2 squares. So x to the second, this is 3 to the second. We'll write this as x minus 3, x plus 3. And again, as I said before, it's very important that you review the factoring we did last time. The last 2 classes, we talked in detail about how to factor this. So review that for this to make more sense. What is the next step?
Each side equals 0.
That's right, solve using this product property, which means a times b 0 means x. We don't need parentheses once we split, so 1x minus 3 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. So x is 3.
X minus 3.
Right, or x is minus 3. So that's pretty much the process every time to solve quadratic equations by factoring, or even third degree equations. We're going to see that in a moment. We can factor that as well. Make sure it's in standard form again, then factor it, then solve it, split it into smaller equations. So it's not always this simple. It could be complex, it could be longer, but again, the concept is the same. The steps pretty much are the same. There's another one here. Say I have x to the second equals 25. Again, we want to solve this by factoring, not some other method. I know some of you may just try to take the square root of both sides, but this is not solving by using the square root property. This is by factoring. So we have to follow this method. So the question, you have to follow the method that the question is asking you to do. We have about 4 methods at least of solving quadratic equations. One of them is factoring. So make sure you use the right one that's you're being asked to use. What do you think you do first? Look at the steps again. What is the first thing you do here to solve this by factoring?
We're gonna move 25 to the left side.
That's right. So all the terms again must be on one side like this.
Negative.
Okay, it's going to turn into a negative.
So negative 25.
Exactly. So this is a positive 25. If you move it over to the other side, it becomes negative 25.
Equals 0.
Okay, that's good. We did the first standard form. What else?
Factor.
Factor. Again, this is binomial. We're going to use the same method as here. The difference of two squares, x minus 5, x plus 5. Okay, we just factored. Now we're going to solve using the zero product property. A times b equals 0. That means either a equals 0 or the other factor b. 0. If you add 5, this will be 5.
5 and minus 5.
Subtract 5x is negative 5. Okay, so again, this is a combination of subjects or topics that we talked about before. One of them is solving linear equations. We did this in the first or second or third class. The other one is factoring, which we talked about recently. So make sure you review those two because together they're used to solve these problems. The only new thing again here is this new concept of the zero product property. Is it about okay at this point? Any confusions, any questions? Everybody?
No question, Professor.
Okay, so again, please don't hesitate to ask questions and engage.
You always use subtraction. I noticed, like when you put the x to the second minus 25,
Mm-hmm.
it's always subtract, or you just
Nope, you basically change the sign of this. Whatever you had here, and when you move it, the sign of it changes.
okay.
So this was an invisible positive.
Oh,
Move
okay.
over to negative.
Okay.
If this was a negative initially, then when you move it over, this will be a positive.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so basically we're gonna be redoing the same thing. You just take longer, maybe more complex equations and pretty much use the same thing to solve them. So there's another one here. Let's see. Let me look for another example. So sometimes you may have things on both sides of the equation. But you still have to write it in standard form. And that's what we're gonna see in this next example, x plus 6. We got x plus 6, x minus 2, and okay, so there's another quadratic equation. Doesn't look as simple as the other ones, but again, we're gonna try to do the same thing, this 3 main steps. So how do you handle this? What do you think we do first?
You have to move the x minus 8 to the other side of the equation.
We will have to do that at some point, but you just move them now. There's nowhere to put them, or we still have these parentheses. So before we move these over, let's break this up.
We're gonna open parentheses first.
Exactly. Let's distribute this first. So by the way, this is not a zero product property. This is not a times b is 0. So we can't use that unless you have 0 here. In this case, we have a product, but there's no 0. So we can't go ahead and say this is 0 or this is 0. We can't do this step right away and split it because this has to be 0. So let's try to write this in standard form again. It has to look like this. All the terms on one side and 0, something like this. So before you move these, it's better to first break this up, distribute, then we're gonna move these over to combine them with the result of this. So distributive property x to the second minus 2x positive 6x. We're multiplying. Multiply, it's negative 12 and x minus 8. Again, before you move these, let's combine like terms here. So we're going to combine these two. So x to the second positive 4x minus 12 is x minus 8. Now that we don't have any like terms to combine, we can move these. We're going to combine this, move this next to this. Negative 8 will be combined with this, so these will not change. X to the second plus 4x. Both of these, when we move them to the other side of the equal sign, we have to change their sign. So this is a positive x. It turns into
Negative x and positive 8.
that's right. And this one negative 8 turns into positive 8. Before I write the equal sign.
Oh yeah, why it's
This
equal.
goes over positive 8. We moved both of these. The equal sign is here. Both of these moved, so we have 0 on this side. X to the second will be combined with negative 1x. This will be positive 3x. Combine these two together, will be negative 4 and 0. So all this just to write the equation in standard form. Okay, so this is standard form. So it depends on how long the equation is. It may take more steps than the rest, or sometimes it might already be in standard form. If not, you may have to work a little bit to write it in standard form. That's the first one, first step. What do you do next?
Factor.
Right, next step is to factor. Trinomial, so we need two numbers that multiply to negative 4 and add up to 3. What numbers?
Negative 4 and 1.
Let's try that. Negative 4 and 1. You mean positive 1, right?
Yeah, or opposite.
Times 1 is negative 4, but negative 4 plus 1 will not give you negative positive.
So positive 4 and negative 1.
Right, we have to flip the signs.
Mm.
Okay, now this is factoring. We just factored it. Finally, the zero product property. Make sure you have 0 here first before you split these. So a times b is 0. That means x plus 4. 0 or x minus 1. 0, so we can say x was negative 4. X is 1. Okay, so look at the equation first. It may take you more steps. So this is the last step, goes to solve. Of course, using the zero product property. All right. Any questions about this example? The last one here, everybody. Sarah, Che, Patricia, Elcida, Georgie, Gomro, Jodrat, Marta, Amir, Marsada, Rosa, Raquel,
Rosa's here.
Anna, Sajes,
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
everybody.
Help us.
Nobody's sleeping.
Yes, Professor. I'm here. Sajas is here.
All right.
I'm here,
Make
Professor.
sure you're awake, everybody. Okay, so that's basically how you solve quadratic equations with using factoring. Again, the keyword here is factoring. We're going to learn other methods of solving equations. There is at least 3 more. We're going to do them in another class. So this was all quadratic or second degree. Let's see how to do third degree equations. Okay, instead of 2, we're going to have a third degree here. Let's make this number 3. So third degree equations or cubic equations because the highest power is 3. Let's say if you write something like this and
I'm sorry, Professor, I brought you something. Can you read it, please, if you have a chance?
yep, I see it. You want to leave now?
Yes, I have to leave.
Why do you have to leave? You said you have
Other extra class because of the other legal class.
What kind of class?
I'm taking tutoring, other classes. It's like the 20 minutes. If I can back, I will come back again.
Okay, why did you schedule during class? You're gonna miss this one if you're gonna go to the other, right?
I didn't have any other choices. That's fine.
Mhm.
So this is just 20 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah. Okay, we're almost done
Thank
here. We have maybe less than 10 minutes or 15, but yeah, if you think
So you're recording, right?
yep, you can go, yeah.
Okay,
But
thank you.
it's not a good idea to schedule other stuff during class, okay? Anyway, so third degree equations, let's take another example here. Let's say plus x and maybe minus 5 x 0. Let's put some powers here. All right, so this is a little bit different. This is a third degree, not a quadratic equation. But believe it or not, the steps are the same. The steps are exactly the same. Let's actually put this one on the other side. Okay, so even though it's third degree, but pretty much the same concept here, the same steps apply. So what do you do first again? What is the first step?
We're gonna move 5x to the left, yeah?
Yep. Just like
Minus 5x equals 0. Yeah.
just like with quadratic equations, we can do the same thing. You have minus 5x. And okay, so that's standard form. It just means move everything to one side. Now we're gonna factor this. So as you factor, again, we saw a few methods of factoring. Which one do you always try first? Everybody, what is the first?
Yeah, but how are you gonna factor? You just have one number, whole number.
We saw 4 methods of factoring before. What
Can
is
you
the first
just
one you try?
factor out the x?
Okay, so what do we call that method of factoring?
AC method, I think it was.
GC.
No, not AC is the other one. I'm sorry.
Always, yeah, that's always the first one you want to look for. Before, if this doesn't work, so this is the first one, GCF. Then after this, depending on the expression, you could try grouping. You could try binomial factoring if it's a binomial. Difference of 2 squares, what we saw here earlier. If not, if it's a trinomial, then you try trinomial factoring. Basically, what we did here, this is trinomial factoring. I'm gonna strongly recommend that you go back and review all the methods of factoring. This is gonna be very important here. Again, 80%, 90% of this will be based on factoring. Okay, so always try the GCF first, the greatest common factor. Could be a number, could be a letter, could be both. If that doesn't work, then you try one of these. What do you think is common between these?
X.
X.
That's right, we have x3, we have x2, we have x1. All have x. Which one do you take as a common factor?
X1.
Always take the lowest one. We don't have any other number common other than 1. It's not going to be that helpful, so no need to write the 1 here. Open the parentheses and then
X2.
right, divide. x3 by x1 is x2.
X.
Plus X. Plus 5. I mean minus 5.
Minus 5.
That's right. Negative 5x divided by x is just 5. Equal.
0.
Good. Can we factor more? Can we factor this a little more? Actually, I meant to put 6 here, not 5, to make things convenient. 6 and 6. Okay, let me erase that. So negative That would be negative 6x. And negative 6 here. Okay, now when you did the GCF, now after you do the GCF, what do you look for again? This is a trinomial, so attempt to factor it using trinomial factoring. So what numbers multiply to negative 6 and add up to negative 6 and add up to positive 1? The numbers are
5.
3,
No, 6.
3, ne? 5,
3.
3 y 2.
Yeah, 3 and 2.
What sign should we use?
Nega-
Plus 3
nega-
and
Negative teacher or plus?
negative 2.
That's right. Because if you multiply them, you get negative 6. If you combine them, you get positive 1. So now we have, this is in the form of A times B times C. Again, this is, we can use the zero product property. When two things or more are multiplied and the product is 0, what does that mean about the values of A, B, C?
Each equals 0.
Could be each equals 0, or at least one of them is 0, at least one. If A is 0, it's going to negate all of this. It's going to make this 0. If B is 0, it's going to make everything is 0. So at least one of them is 0. So it could be A is 0, or B is 0, or C is 0, or all at the same time, or maybe two of them are 0, but at least one of them has to be 0. So this is just like we did before. So it means A equals 0, B equals 0, or C equals 0. So this time, since it's a third degree equation, we're going to have 3 smaller equations and possibly 3 solutions. So when you have a third degree, expect to have 3 solutions or less. So what is A in this equation? Is the first factor, so A is 0. Or what's B? B is this one, x plus 3.
X plus 3 and C x minus 2.
Right? Or finally C, which is?
X minus 2.
That's right. So once you split your equation, it was a kind of a complex equation with higher powers, but once you factor it, factoring allows us to split this into smaller equations. This one is already solved. No need to do anything. X is negative 3. If you move it to the other side or do minus 3. Finally, X is 2. So we have 3 solutions. We can write these nicely, combine them together in a solution set, in a set notation, open the curly braces. Then we're going to arrange these from the lowest to the highest. Which number goes first?
0.
Not 0, but we have a number that's less than 0. That number,
Negative 3.
I got 3, then 0, then 2. As you remember with from functions, with the set notation, we try to arrange the numbers from the lowest to the highest. And that's the final solution here for this third degree equation. You could even possibly factor higher degree equations. Could it be 4th, 5th degree? You pretty much just do the same thing. If you can get it to factor into some A times B times C times D, whatever, once you do that, you can eventually split it into smaller first degree equations and then solve each one of those equations. Okay, so no big deal, even if the power is higher than usual. All right. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so that's pretty much it for this lecture today. Any questions, everybody, from any of these examples? Please let me know.
Nope.
Professor, did you post like those sheets where you write to see the examples, or you just record it?
What do you mean? I'm gonna record this and post it.
Yeah, but I mean the notes.
The notes, what I'm writing right now, it doesn't
Yes.
come out. I tried to convert this to PDF, save as PDF, but it comes out all over the place. It doesn't come
Yeah,
out.
I did couple of screenshots, but I don't know. I mean, if you can do it.
I'll try it again. This for
Okay.
some reason doesn't come out nicely in a PDF. It's all over the place and pages are broken or cut. So
Mhm.
I'll try it again to see if the PDF comes out
Okay,
nice.
thank you.
I'll put it next to this video. So I'm posting this. I'm gonna post this to Blackboard. You guys can watch it. I strongly recommend that you watch this
Mhm.
before you do the homework. And also, like I said before, you need to review your factoring. Factoring is very, very important in this class. I don't know, probably 80%. I mean, at least I would say 60 to 70% of it is based on factoring, whether directly or indirectly. So this is indirectly involving factoring. A direct question would be factor this or factor that. Any other questions, everybody? Okay, we